Thank you, and welcome to this session about implementing GDPR. And I will use two cases. One, which is about, we'll skip that one, or should we have a, oh, actually, this is somewhat important because I play two different roles in these cases. In the one case about this global organization, I'm actually on the leadership of that organization. It's IEEE. You may know about IEEE. It's a global organization for, our tagline is Advancing Technology for Humanity. And we work a lot with standards. You may be aware of the Wi-Fi standard. That is actually a standard developed by IEEE. IEEE is also a membership organization, and I will tell a bit more about that later on. The other hat I carry is as a GDPR and cybersecurity expert at Acando, which is one of the major consulting companies in Sweden. And we do a lot of GDPR works. And this is from my experience in working with small but data-intensive businesses in GDPR. So sharing those two experiences and seeing what the differences and the similarities are, that is what I would like to share with you today. I've been the advisor on GDPR to the CIO of IEEE on a pro bono basis. So that's why I can share it for you as well. So, some basic facts. IEEE, IEEE.org, is a global engineering organization, membership organization for professionals. We have lots of academics and also a lot of people that actually do practical work in all sorts of, well, the common background is usually that you studied physics or electrical engineering or electronics or computing or any of that sense. It started off as the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Today, that area covers so much more. It could be biomedical, it could be nanotechnology, it could be power supply, and anything in between there. And of course, a lot of communication, as that is also based on electrons moving around. The membership globally is about 400,000. Above that, within European Union, we have about 50,000 members. So this is definitely an issue for IEEE to take care of. The rules apply to members with their feet or bodies on European ground. Doesn't mean that you are a EU citizen. And we, well, in the academic world, people do travel around. So you could be a Chinese or Asian or US researcher and you reside in Europe. And that will count just as well. IEEE run a lot of international conferences, scientific conferences and other conferences. So that is a big business, and as you understand, where scientific people meet, there's a great mix of people from different countries. That's the whole point of going to a conference, just like coming here today. So that is also a crucial part. So GDPR applies to all those events. And we have staff in the US, so, and the headquarters is also in the US, so the basic law that we live by is New York State law, which is sometimes very odd, but that's the fact. And then we have offices in Europe, in Vienna. We have offices in China, in Japan, in India, and staff as well. So it's spread out. And then we have volunteers, people like me being a director, it's, again, a non-paid position, but it's quite a lot of responsibility. And especially with this Gdpr today, it lands in my lap. So that's one big picture, overview of one organization with global presence. The other is a small corporation. It's fast growing. It works with headhunting, search and consulting. And their basic trade is about personal data. Finding people, trawling, LinkedIn, social media, and professional networks looking for a candidate to fit into a position. So their best value is what they know about people, not only by this regular data that we are quite okay to use, but also it comes into sensitive data at some point in time when it's getting close to hiring, to background checkups and so on. And at that point, some interesting facts may come around, things that you don't share publicly. It may be about your religious beliefs or your race, ethnical background, something that you've done before that you don't really share publicly. Your health. If you're going to be on a high-ranked position, you need to be a healthy person. If it stands between a person that has a good health record and a person that has had some sicknesses, who would you choose? There's a tipping. The other one that seems to have a better health record, because this is a demanding job. And therefore, this is sensitive data, and of course, then we have to treat it very carefully. The corporation I'm talking about has something around 50 people. It's been growing fast. It's grown out of another company. So there are some traditions on how to do things, good or bad. They do it that way. It's not really put on paper. They were small, so they just did it. And every new person that comes around learns from the one that's there. And this also puts some pressure on them to actually conceptualize this, so they can actually say that we're processing data this way. And that's one of the things that we've done together. They usually play in Sweden. They might have some candidates from the Nordic countries, but basically Swedish. Definitely within the European Union. It's not a global presence at all. So it's about the use of personal data. For IEEE, it's personal data for a minimum of these 400,000 members that pay membership dues. It's also back data of past members. And, well, how can we keep that? How long may we keep it? Because there's a churn of membership. Some people leave and some people come. The basic input comes from students and young professionals. And students tend to move around a lot. And then they become young professionals and they move somewhere else. Within the academic world, as PhD students, they seem to stay another 4 years and become doctors. And sometimes they just disappear, and we lose track of them. And for a membership organization, keeping track of members is one of the key things, because that's what we're living from. And then we have all the participants of the conferences. Some of them are members and some are not. And we all also want to keep track of both these parties because they are the basis for the invitation for the next conference, similar to how it works for this conference. Some were here last year, maybe some of you, and you'll be invited again. How long should we keep that data? How long are we allowed to keep that data? And what do we know about the freshness of it? Maybe we're swapping jobs because we come to this conference. Who knows? So keeping membership data up to date is a key thing. That's a major struggle, I would say, sometimes. And the legal basis we have for doing this in IEEE is actually that we have a membership model that I'm paying a dues, yearly dues, and that's the contract that we have. And also for safety reasons, we ask for the consent of handling, well, IEEE ask for the consent of handling my data. Because we're also interested in what I'm doing, what's my profile, my professional profile. I'm a cybersecurity expert. Do I work in academia? Do I work in private business? Can we ask those questions freely or collect data? And we come to the point that it's safe when we ask this kind of question that I also ask for the consent to store it. Because it's in my interest that it's there. Or I may decide that I just don't want to leave anything, and that's okay too. So there's a consent to that. This small corporation, they have a database of clients or possible clients, candidates, I would say, which in the range of 5,000–6,000 people. That's where they pick and choose. And they look for someone and they see some profile on LinkedIn. There's a tool in LinkedIn, for example, where actually you can do search. And what they start off with doing is actually they use that tool or their own database and say, we have someone that could be a fit here. And instead of bringing that data into their own system, they have a CRM system, so where the data sits. But before they bring any data, any personal data into that, they just send a link to those people that they found, if they found them on LinkedIn. So they don't touch any data. And that's a way to get around with the consent, just to present candidates. Next step, if they want to go further, the customer who demands this candidate, then they need to have an agreement with the customer, first of all, that they will treat data with confidentiality. I just had an email conversation this day. We crafted a message to our customers. And I had to review it and say, was it okay or not? And how they get the consent from the customer that this is the proper way to do it. We hand you confidential data and you treat it with confidentiality. They need to confirm that before they get to see anything. And I think that is a good way to do it. When it comes to next step, the candidate now being into the process of being a real candidate, he or she need to leave the consent to go further. So it's a clear cut there, because it's also in the shared interest that he or she actually is well presented. And the profile, whether it was LinkedIn or somewhere else, may need some updates. And that is put into their own system. And then they start to work and massage the data. So basically, their legal basis is by contract. And a little bit by consent. They strive to get on the contract side because that is much easier to handle. all data has a life cycle. So as I said, with this membership corporation IEEE, we choose to be members on an annual basis. So members choose to renew or not renew. So by end of February, that's called a cutoff. And that means that there's a final limitation. Would you still, we would like to have you as a member. Please, please. That's the basic message of that email that comes. And then after some time, my membership data is cleaned out. However, some have insurances through IEEE, especially people in the US. So then those data need to be kept anyway. So that need to be handled specifically. In Europe, we don't have that much of insurance through this organization, so it's less of an issue. But since it could be a US person that actually is living in Europe, so then it's valid again. So there are some tricky things that the legal side of IEEE had looked carefully into. And how should we do with our staff, our employed people in Europe or elsewhere? Because treating people differently is also causing trouble in the systems. So better treat everything the same. And we have different laws, India law, Japanese law. Well, in the basic law is US law and New York State law. And then we have other local laws. And each national association of IEEE have their own laws to obey to. So the legal picture is quite tricky. Therefore, there's a DPO there now to be able to deal with this, because otherwise the confusion, I think, would be immense. We have the issue of, we want to reuse the data we harvest from all sorts of conferences, because that's value, that's say the oil of our organization. We would like to invite those participants to other similar conferences. We like to invite scientific papers from them. That's one of the main sources of intellectual property for IEEE. So there's a copyright process to that as well, which is not, well, of course, there are personal data there, of course, because it's a person that creates this, and his or her or research organization that also, their data is there. So, and we have a huge repository of some 4 million papers. So you can imagine, what if we should need to look into that heap? That need to have some oversight too. And last but not least, we have IEEE has many IT systems with personal data. For membership management, for all these things that goes with conferences, that go with volunteers' works, that goes with analytics, loads and loads of analytics, trying to find out, oh, here we have a new research arena about the cross of, smart grid, for example. It's a bit about electronics, a bit about computers, a little bit about power engineering, and ethics, and it's about a few things more probably. How can we make something out of that? And then we need raw data. And who is doing what? Where can we find those research groups? Where can we find those universities, those influential professors? And are we allowed to do that? I hope so. You are the DPOs. You may be able to advise. In this small corporation, on the other side, it's the clients, the customers, the candidates, and the people that work in the corporation, this small corporation. So the amount of data is so much smaller. And we basically obey Swedish law when we treat this data. No big deal. Swedes in Sweden and mainly Swedish candidates as well. And how many systems they have? Well, they have one CRM system, they have one HR system, and they have mail and file servers. That's it. Very simple. Coming to IT systems, and we'll look a bit deeper into small corporations. I've been working with them as a Gdpr coach because they wanted to do most of the job themselves, which is good because then they know what to do. They are working with their suppliers, so they need to have this agreement with the suppliers that they treat their data well. They have it in place now, so that's in addition to the regular contract they have. And they're cleaning out the client database and the file servers from old stuff because they've been collecting everything. And they find out that we don't need it. Something that's older than 2 years is outdated, and it's actually not safe to use. I advised them to have a major backup of all the systems in case they would change their mind. Put that backup in a locked place, and then start the cleaning. And they come a long way with that. For a global corporation like IEEE, it's a much bigger thing. They need to clean out systems, sunset systems that are overlapping or totally not updatable. So that one of the major databases has been exchanged to something that is more modern and that allows for actually to do the search for a particular record all over. And the previous database with membership data was open to almost any officer, elected or appointed, which was some 12,000 people when they counted. You just got it by your position. And when they looked at how many people that were using this data, it showed that about a tenth actually were there and doing something. So now it's restricted down to particular roles. And if I would need it, since I'm I'm in charge of Europe, Middle East, and Africa, so I should be able to look into my membership base. But those who got it by default, they can now request it if needed. So that's a better model as well. And of course, there's better logging and better tracing who's doing what in the new system. There are many, many, many dependencies. So if you start to do a technical cleanup, taking away systems, there's a risk that you don't know what happens. And whatever the lawyers or others says, you have to work carefully. Otherwise, it may stop the whole thing. And another complicating factor is that the transfer of personal data globally, something that sits on a server in New Jersey, where the headquarters is, may leave for some processing in Singapore or in Japan or elsewhere. And I don't know where the servers are, actually. But we have treatment of European Union personal data somewhere out of the European Union, that's for sure. So in order to set the stage for GDPR and compliance, it comes a lot about information and education. If someone of you were in my keynote at lunchtime, I spoke a lot about information, communication, and education, because that's the way we can do it. One person that makes something that is not okay can break the whole safety shield that we have put up. Whatever systems that are safe, one person doing the wrong thing, downloading a membership database on his own hard disk has actually compromised the whole thing. So that will not be allowed. There will be actually to this membership database, IEEE is putting this, the people that are okay could read data, and if you're really okay, you have access to download and change data. So that is also a level of security. I've been involved in informing and educating staff a couple of times. They have internally produced material, and depending on what position you have, whether you're in IT, whether you're working with membership, or anything else, it comes in different flavors. And they have developed that. And there are also flyers for general member, general user. And of course, this week, everybody in the world actually has received this information about GDPR, and that IEEE is taking good care of my personal information. When it comes to consent, since membership period is by year, the next time we send out invoices for membership, there will also be this consent by paying. I also give my consent. So that will come that way. For a small corporation, it's much easier. You can collect 50 people or groups of 2 times 25, have a coffee, have information, and it's there. And they know each other. They are based in the same office. So much easier, rather than spread out all over the world. And them just sending out today or on Monday this information to the clients. And then they're done. Whereas for IEEE, this would be a process that goes on into next year, well beyond that. So it's about communication, more in detail. Staff, town hall meetings, gather everybody, lots of question and answers, and those were also recorded. And they've been watched by those who weren't there for one reason or the other, traveling or illness or whatever. So that's a good way to do it. It's reusable. And for volunteers, which is a specific case, it's not staff, it's not members, it's a special sort of members. We have got training as well, so we understand what we are in charge of. Webinars, there are newsletters, there are actually face-to-face meetings. So I will sit on a panel in June, the next board of directors meeting, just to make sure that all officers understand what's in it. Not only us from Europe, but those that are in Asia, in other places in the world, because they have these conferences and they need to treat data the proper way. And as I said, members get this information in the renewal package. So that's the plan ahead. In this small corporation, they just do it. They document the processes and they're done. They provide the customers with the information and they're done. Easy peasy. By Monday, no, by next week, we'll have a meeting with the staff and I will introduce what Gdpr is all about. So, that's the way to do it, from the huge global multi-number people to a small and data-intensive organization. IEEE has a DPO assigned, a legal person, and the other company, they have a GDPR responsible person appointed, and she will report to our data authority in Sweden in case it's needed. And we hope they should not need to do that. Thank you.